will not forgive us of. And I think we all know what it is. But when we get back to the lesson tonight, Cain had the opportunity to confess. And he chose not to, but he chose to get smart with God. So because he got smart with God, we went down to verse 10, and it said, and he said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy blood brother, the brother's blood, cried unto me from the ground. Cain, go ahead and make a confession. But instead of making confession, he got smart with God. Verse 11, and now art thou cursed from the earth, which had opened her mouth and received the blood from thy hand. In other words, God said, Cain, I seen you. I knew exactly what you had done. I looked at this, and this is the second, I guess you said, court case that you will find in the Bible. What do you mean the second court case that we will find in the Bible? Well, when Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, God put them on court. He put them on Front Street, and he asked them what they had done. And because of what they had done, God sent judgment. Their judgment was that God put them out of the garden. Now here comes one of Adam and Eve's sons, which is Cain. Here he has gone before the court of God. And because he lied to God and got sarcastic with God, now God gives judgment upon him. I went down to verse 11, and it said, and now art thou cursed from the earth, which had opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hands. God said, I know you're guilty because I seen you slay your brother. I went on down to verse 12, and it said, when thou tillest the ground, it should not henceforth yield anything unto thee. It should not yield her strength unto thee. Not henceforth yield her strength unto thee. You should be a vagabond, a fugitive. Thou shalt be in the earth. Now God gave him his sentence. He said, from now on, Cain, when you plant something, whatever you plant, it ain't coming up. Can we put a pin there tonight? Because see, it's rough when God puts sentences on you and tell you that. He said, I don't care what you do, try to prosper. I don't care what you do and trying to grow anything. He said, whatever you put your hands to, whatever you go to do to support yourself, it shall not prosper. Whatever you plant, God said it ain't coming up. He was the one that tilled the ground, made green stuff to grow, made food and other things to grow. But God said, whatever you put your hands to from now on, it will not prosper. And then he said, you're going to become a fugitive and a vagabond. In other words, vagabond, he said, you're going to become one that travel around all the time, not having a place to lay your head, not having a place to stay. And you'll be going all through the earth, and you'll have a mark on you that people will know what you've done. I went down to verse 13, and it said, Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Now here he is crying unto God now. He done killed his brother. He done lied about it. He has got judgment from God, and now he's crying that the sentence is too harsh. Don't that sound like some of the people of the world today? When the gavel comes down and the sentence is hard, then they cry that the sentence is not fair. But I went down to verse 13, if you will, and it said, Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out from the face of the earth, and from thy face should I hide. And I should be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. Now, here he is talking to God. God has given him his sentence. Now he's complaining to God that I'm not going to be able to have no peace because everywhere I go, somebody going to know who I am. God, you have put a mark on me, and people will know that I am the one that killed my brother. Latter part of verse 14. And it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. Now he crying out to God. Oh boy. Go down to verse 15. And the Lord said unto him, therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. Can we stop there for a minute? Now, God is saying, and God put this out that so whosoever should do anything against Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any find him should kill him. God said, I don't want him killed. I have put a mark on him. Everyone is going to know who he is, but I don't want him to die. I want him to suffer. And ain't that something? God said, I'm not going to kill you, but you're going to regret what you did. And the main thing you're going to regret is you lied to God. The main thing you're going to regret is that you didn't have compassion enough to tell God what you had done. You tried to cover it up, Cain. And God said, because you covered up your sin, everywhere you go, people are going to know who you are. God will sometimes expose us as to who we are and not allow us to hide behind what we're doing. I went down to verse 16 here. Now, verse 9 down to verse 15, it tells the story of Cain's life. It tells the story of what Cain did. It tells the story of what God's response was. And then not only did it tell the story of what Cain's life would be from then on out, but when I got down to verse 16, down to verse 24, it talks about the ungodly line of Cain. It talks about Cain's descendants. Well, somebody's saying tonight, well, how would Cain have any descendants if it was only Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel? How would Cain have any descendants now at this point in the Bible? Where did he get his wife for to have kids? How would he have some descendants? But when we read in this text, we must understand that verse 16 through verse 26 or verse 24, it just continues to tell the life of Cain. It tells us how Cain sinned. It tells us that Cain will finally get married and bear children. So it's just really telling us the life of Cain. But when we get over to chapter 15, it's going to tell us how Cain became a father, how Cain began to bear children, and how the earth began to be replenished. I went down to verse 16 and it said, and Cain went out from the presence of the Lord after God had gave him his sentence, and out of the land of Nod on the east end of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he built a city and called the name of that city after the name of his son Enoch. And unto Enoch was born. Now here comes population in the earth. Unto Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mehujael, and Mehujael begat Methuselah, and Methuselah begat Lamech. Generations is starting to come. And Lamech took unto him two wives. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. Can we put a pin there tonight? Because we're seeing that now here it is, Cain is beginning to produce family. And it's coming from Cain, but where did Cain get his wife? Let's skip over to chapter 5 real quick and we'll find out. Then we'll come back to Cain's lineage. When we get to chapter 5 in verse 1, the Bible tells us here, this is the book of the generations of Adam. Now, we were going over the generations of Cain, which was the sinful generation. And now in chapter 5, it gets back to the book of the generation of Adam. And it talks about here in the book of the generation of Adam, it said, this is the book of the generation of Adam. And the day that God created man, in the likeness of God, he made him. Male and female created he them. And he blessed them and called their name Adam in the day in which they were created. God is allowing this story to be told all over again about how it got started and about how Adam and Eve and how he had created them and put them in the garden. Got down to verse 5 and it said, all the days of Adam lived were 930 years and he died. Now, can we put a pin there and go back to verse 4? It said, in verse 4, and Adam lived 130 years and begat sons in his own likeness and after his image. Adam and Eve came together and had more children and called his name Seth. In verse 4, in the days of Adam, after he had begotten Seth, were 800 years, and he begot sons and daughters. Adam and Eve, after they had Cain and Abel, they kept producing children. And in the producing of children, it started populating the earth. Now look how long that Adam lived. Adam lived how long? Adam lived 930 years. Now, 930 years is a long time. Can we imagine 100 years and people begin to start populating the earth? In 1 year, in this day and time, I think I was looked up today, it was saying that like 90,000 people that is born in the world in 1 year. And when you look at that, when you go to 90,000 times 100 years, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of population. So it tells us how the earth began to be populated. And because the earth was being populated, after Cain's father and mother, Adam and Eve, started having children, then Cain ends up marrying one of his sisters. And they began to have children. Now, at this time in the Bible, there was not a law against marrying in the family. That was not a law that said that a man couldn't take a wife that were kin or next of kin to them. And we're going to try to get to that tonight if we can. That only came later on in the Bible, where God separated generations for as to you can only marry depending on the third or the fourth or the fifth generation. After that, you can marry somebody out of that immediate family. But we'll get to that later on. But in looking at this, I went back because I want to go back to the ungodly land of Cain. We know how Cain got his wife. It was one of Adam's and Eve's daughters, which was Cain's sister. Go down to verse 18, verse 19, I'm sorry. And Levites took unto him 2 wives. The name of one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. And Ada bare Jabal, and he was father of such as dwell in tents, and of such as have cattle. And his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all such that handled the harp and the organ. Now, the Bible is telling us not only were these people being born, but it's telling us what their craft was, who they was, how they lived, how they supported themselves. In verse 20 again, and Adam bare Jabal, and he was the father of such that dwell in tents, that were tents dwellers, and of such that had cattle. They had livestock. That was their job, that was their lifestyle. And then his brother's name was Jubal, and his father was of all such handled the harp and the organ. They played music. They made musical instruments. And in verse 22, and Zillah, she will also bear Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. In other words, he was one that was crafty in crafting and making brass vases and using iron to make structures. And God is letting us know and seeing the intellect that God gave them to be able to know what music was, to be able to know not only to how to play music or sing music, but make string instruments to make music unto God. And then when I got down to verse 23 again, if you will, and Levi said unto his wife, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, ye wives of Levi, hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. In other words, he said, I had to kill a young man because he attacked me. I had to slay a young man because he wounded me. He was saying that was in self-defense, what he was telling his 2 wives. And then in verse 24, it says, if Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. He said, look, it's Cain. It was in self-defense. And if Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. And then I went down to verse 25. It talks about the godly line of Seth. Now here it says in verse 25, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son and called his name Seth. And from God, for God said she had appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. Now Eve get pregnant again. And she said that God had appointed her another son to replace Abel. But when I was looking at this, look what it really says. Let's read verse 25 again. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son and called his name Seth. For God, said she, had appointed me a seed instead of Abel, who Cain slew. God had replaced the son that Cain had killed, which was Abel. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and called his name Enoch. Then began men to call upon the Lord. Now, I love verse 26 here, because this was at a point where men began to call upon the Lord. Verse 25 and verse 26 is very important. This is the godly line of Seth. But why would I say the godly line of Adam? Because see, Adam had already sinned. So the Bible teaches here that the godly line came not through Adam, but it came through one of Adam's sons, which was Seth. In verse 26, and Seth, to him also there was born a son, and called his name Enos. Then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. There's a godly Seth that was born, and there was an ungodly Seth that is born. Cain is an ungodly Seth. And then the brother Seth will be the godly Seth, the godly tribes that will follow God. We went down to chapter 5. And when we got into chapter 5, now this begins to tell the story of the generations again, how the earth became very populated. And it became populated over a period of time. And when we read these verses, we're going to find out that they wasn't living like we live 70 to 80 to 90 to 100 years or so and die. They was living 800 and 900 and 700 years at a time before they died. And when you look at let's go down to verse 5, if you will. Well, actually, chapter 5 and verse 2. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam, in the day when they were created. And Adam, just telling the story all over again, and Adam lived 130 years and begat sons in his own likeness after his image, and called his name Seth. Adam lived 130 years and still was bearing children. Gonna be longer than that when we keep reading. Verse 4, in the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. 800 years, and he still begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Adam life was 930 years. Can we put a pin there tonight? This lets us know the hand of God. God can create and God can do anything that he wants to do, and he can do his will any time that he chooses to. And back in the day, God will allow men to live long on the earth, and not only living, but they were producing. And as they produce, verse 5 again, And all the days of Adam was 930 years, and he died. Now, I put a pin on and he died because this lets us know that surely as a man lives, he's going to die. And after Adam, all these other men that come behind him, all these other generations come behind him, it said they lived such and such years and he died. Such and such years and he died. Surely as a man lives, he's going to die. I went down to verse 6 and it said, and Seth lived 105 years and begot Enos. And Seth lived after he begot Enos 807 years and begat sons and daughters. At 807 years, he was still bearing sons and daughters. And all the days of Seth was 912 years, and he died. And then he come to Enos. And Enos lived 90 years and begat Canaán. And Enos lived after he begat Canaán 815 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enos were 905 years, and he died. It keeps saying after they give the life of what they did, they died. I kept reading, and I got down to verse 13, and it said, and Canaan lived after he begat Mahalalel 840 years and begat sons and daughters. He continually populating the earth. And all the days of Canaan were 910 years, and he died. I won't go through all of them, but when I got down to verse 20, I was looking at this, and it lets us know we're going to see a switch, a change here. In verse 20, all the days of Jared was 960 years, 962 years, and he died. Verse 21, Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters. Can we put a pin on I'm on verse 22. And Enoch walked with God. Walked with God. That's a different than just being born, living, and dying. But here it says that Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Now, what does that mean in verse 24 when Enoch walked with God and he did not die, for God took him? I used to tell a little story about this, that God came to visit Enoch one day. And as they was walking along and talking along, he just kept walking with God. God was on his way back to him. And as they kept walking and talking, somehow the day had got late. And Enoch, it was too far for him to go back home the other way. So he just kept walking to God with God all the way to him. And what I'm trying to say in that story, when we begin to walk with God, we got to look at the time that we have behind us when we wasn't walking with him, and look at the time we have in front of us that we are walking with him. And we got to keep walking with him. If we keep walking with him, we'll find ourselves and walk ourselves to him. So we got to keep walking with God. It didn't say he walked with God and stopped walking with God, but he said he walked with God and God took him. And we don't never know when God is going to take us in this day, but make sure that we're walking with God when our day comes. And then when I looked at verse 25, it said, and Methuselah lived 108 years, 80 years, 187 years, and begat Lamech. Look how old these men is. Methuselah lived 187 years and begat Lamech. And Methuselah lived after he begat Lamech 782 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Methuselah, and we know we heard that name a lot. All the days of Methuselah were 969 years. On record, Methuselah is the oldest person that we know of in the Bible that lived the longest, 969 years. And as I kept looking at that, I went on down to the verse 30. Well, let me go back to verse 28. And it said, and Lamech lived 108 and 2 years and begat son. And he called his name Noah. Now, we know that Noah is coming on the scene, and there's going to be a switch. There's going to be a shift in man's life and living with God. God is, after the length of Methuselah and all the other men that lived before him, and there was so much sin that had become created in the world, that God decided that he was going to start over again. He decided that he was going to scratch off what he had done and start life as we know it today all over again. Somebody said, well, why would God do that? Because when we get down to chapter 6, it tells us about the ungodly multitude, and sin was running rapidly on the earth. And we know that God is not pleased with sin. What time it is? And we know that God is not pleased with sin, and because of the sin that was in the world and how rapidly that the sin was running in the world. Look what God say in chapter 6. It came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. And the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Now, here where it said the sons of God, it's not talking about sons of God, men on earth, but it's talking about angels from heaven. Let me go back and read it again. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with men, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. Now, Methuselah lived 969 years, and there was a sin down through the generation. And God cut our time down from living 800, 700, 800, 900 years, almost 1,000 years. He cut that time down to 120 years that we have to live here on this earth. Why? Because of the sin of man. And we know that that later on, that God gonna cut that time down even more. I went down to verse 4, if you will. It said there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men and were of old men of renown. Now, this is what I'm talking about when I said that the sons of God, which is angels that came down and they took daughters of men. And because of that, that was a sin within itself. So do we have fallen angels? Yes, we do. Why would I say that? Because it's saying it right here in the text. God came into the daughters of when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And then it talks about in verse 5, the ungodly sin continually. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, that every imagination of their thoughts of their hearts were only on evil continually. Every time God turned around, men were doing something evil. And we see a whole lot of that today. And God was displeased with that. And God saw the wickedness of men was great in the earth, and that every imagination, everything that you can imagine that man could do wrong, they were doing it then, and they're also doing it now. And it said, and their hearts was only on evil continually. And he repented God in verse 6. I'm going to leave it at this tonight, and we'll pick up next week. But it repented God that he made man on earth, and it grieved him in his heart. I won't even read verse 7. We'll pick back up there next week. We got to know that when sin was running that rapid, it bothered God so that he repented God that he made man upon the earth. And then on next week, we'll pick up and see what happened for the destruction of man, what took place from the all of these generations. Now you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on the earth, and the earth has been populated. And most of all of them was being sinful upon the earth and had turned away from God into the things that they wanted to do. And I want to end here tonight on this. We got to be careful, even though we're walking with God today. When we turn away from God and start doing sinful things of the earth and in the world, God sees that and he's not pleased with it. And God lets it go on only for so long. And then God will move to do something about it to get our attention. And God is getting our attention. Sometimes it's not in the big catastrophes that happen, but sometimes in the individual catastrophes in our individual lives, that God will let stuff just get all messed up. He will let things come in and storms come in our life and trouble be all around us everywhere. And we ask God, Lord, what is going on? God many times would tell us, you already know what it is. If we would get sin out of the way and move it on down the road, then we'll start to find peace again in our house. But don't think peace is going to come overnight because I left it alone yesterday. We have to start walking in peace with God, have to start walking in obedience with God. And the more we walk in peace and obedience with God, the more we'll see that those troubles be falling off. We'll see that those troubles and those things, hardships that are coming against us, we'll see them start coming against us less. Why? Because I choose to walk with God every day of my life. And then I can also say, even though I have sinned, I know God is a God that is able to forgive sin. Not only forgive our sins, but to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And when we keep that in mind, don't let nobody tell you, no matter how bad you have lived in your life, don't let anyone tell you that God cannot forgive you, that God cannot save you. Because that's God, he's given us his word. He said, you turn to me, I will take you back in. But we can't just tell him that we're going to turn back to him. We have to do it not just verbally, but we have to do it with the way that we live, the way that we think, the way that we carry ourselves. And when we're doing that with God, God said, I'll bring you back in and treat you just like you're a brand new baby. I'll restore you back to your rightful place. And this is all God is asking us to do, to serve him. And he will restore us back to our rightful place. We're going to end there tonight. I thank God for all who have signed on tonight. We thank God for our team there at the church. We met last night online and trying to get ready for our college prep event that's coming up on this coming Saturday. And we ask that we will all be praying that it will be a very successful event, that we'll be able to reach out and help our young people and get them started in the right direction as they get ready to go into their future. So with that, we're going to go ahead and open our lines up and say our